A chain rattled behind a rusted boiler, then another rattle, then a sound like a man trying not to scream. The mop went still. A hand gripped a bucket handle. Water spilled across concrete. Nobody upstairs heard it hit. A dog at the top of the stairs froze, ears up. No bark. Down below, a flashlight beam crawled across a wall of pipes. It stopped on a shape crumpled against the wall. A boot, attached to a leg, attached to a body breathing hard through a broken nose. The man wrapped in wire wore a vest with a sergeant patch. His name was Boone McCrae. Everyone who mattered in that city already thought he was dead. For 2 days, people had walked past that door. What she did in the next 10 minutes would leave a hardened biker weeping in front of his brothers. Stay with me on this one. Delia Vance was 58 years old that fall. She weighed less than the mop bucket she pushed around the old Halston Freight warehouse in East Oakland. 5'2", gray hair in a braid down her back, hands that had scrubbed floors for 31 years and looked it. The warehouse had been half-shuttered since the trucking company folded. Someone downtown had bought the building. Someone else was going to knock it down come spring. In the meantime, a caretaker crew of 3 cleaners kept the offices from turning into a rat hotel. Delia worked the graveyard shift, 11 at night to 5 in the morning, alone in 90,000 square feet of empty desks and dust. She didn't mind. She liked the quiet. She liked her old Dachshund Pretzel curled up in the canvas tote she carried from floor to floor. He was 13 and mostly deaf. He slept through most of it, but his eyes still worked and his nose worked, and sometimes when something wasn't right, he would sit up and stare at a corner for no reason at all. Delia trusted that dog more than she trusted most people. She had reasons. Her husband Frank had been dead 9 years. Cancer. Slow and mean. Her son Ricky had come home from the Gulf War in '91 with something quiet behind his eyes and had never quite left the house again. He'd gone out one night in '94 and hadn't come back. They found him a week later out by the shipyards. Delia didn't talk about that part. Everyone in her building on Foothill Boulevard already knew. 1 apartment, 1 dachshund, 2 jobs, and the kind of bone tired that goes past sleep and settles into a person's face. That was the woman pushing a bucket through Halston Freight on a Tuesday night in the fall of 1994. The building had a basement. Day 1, she'd been told to leave it alone. The lead cleaner, a man named Cortez, had said the boiler down there was on its last legs and management didn't want anybody nosing around and getting hurt. He'd laughed when he said it. Delia had noticed the laugh. It was too quick. She hadn't gone down there, not for the first 3 months. But 2 nights back, around 3 in the morning, she'd been mopping near the freight elevator and heard something. A knock, just one, slow and heavy the way a pipe knocks when air's caught in the line. She'd stood still and listened. Nothing else. She'd gone back to mopping. The next night, another knock and a scrape, like something dragging. She'd told herself it was rats. She'd told herself it was the building settling. She'd told herself a lot of things she hadn't told Cortez. Cortez wasn't the kind of man you told things to. Now it was the 3rd night. She'd packed her lunch pail with what she always packed: a meatloaf sandwich in wax paper, a hard-boiled egg, an apple, a thermos of coffee with too much sugar. She'd tucked Pretzel into his tote and pushed her cart out onto the 2nd floor. 2nd floor by midnight. 1st floor by 2. She was mopping near the freight elevator again at 2:40 when she heard it. Not a knock this time. A rattle, clear as day, metal on metal. And then a human sound, muffled, not quite a groan, more like someone swallowing a scream. Delia set down her mop. She stood there a long minute. Her hand didn't shake. It just went cold. She'd heard sounds like that once before in '91 when Frank was near the end and couldn't help what came out of him at night. She looked at Pretzel. He was sitting up now, eyes on the basement door. "All right," Delia said, quiet, to herself and to the dog and to whatever it was down there. "All right." She rolled her cart to the basement door and set the brake. She lifted Pretzel to the floor. She unclipped the biggest flashlight off her belt. She unhooked the ring of keys Cortez had given her, the ring she wasn't supposed to use for the basement lock. The key turned. The door opened onto concrete stairs going down into the dark. She didn't call out. Whatever was down there, she was going to see it before it saw her. The stairs went down 20 steps. Delia counted them because that's what her mother had taught her to do in a strange place. Count the steps so you know how to get back. Pretzel padded down behind her, 19 pounds and bad hips. She thought about picking him up and decided not to. He'd made his choice. At the bottom, a corridor stretched off to the left toward the boiler. Half the bulbs dead. The air was warmer than upstairs and it smelled like machine oil and something worse under that. Something a body makes when it's been in one place too long. The rattle came again. From behind the boiler, she walked toward it, slow, steady, bucket handle still in her right hand because she didn't know she was carrying it. Behind the boiler, in a space maybe 4 feet wide, someone had piled wooden pallets against the wall. And behind them, a shape, a man on his side, wrists behind his back and wrapped in loops of baling wire, ankles the same, a twist of wire around his neck that ran to a pipe on the wall. He'd been trying to shift himself and the wire had cut into his throat and there was a dark bib of dried blood down his front. He turned his face toward the light. One eye was swollen shut. The other one found her. He didn't beg. He didn't speak. He just watched her. Delia had seen that look on her son's face the last summer he was alive. The look of a man who had already decided how it was going to end and was only wondering how long it would take. "I'm the cleaner," she said, because she didn't know what else to say. The good eye blinked once. "Are they here?" she asked. He shook his head, just barely. It cost him. She knelt beside him. She set the flashlight on the concrete so the beam bounced off the wall and she could see him without blinding him. She touched his hand. It was cold. "I'm going to be back in 2 minutes," she said. "Don't move, don't try, I'm coming right back." She stood, her knees popped. She walked, not ran, back to the stairs. Pretzel sat at the base, ears up. "You stay," she said. "You watch." Her cart was where she'd left it. Under the bottom shelf where Cortez kept the emergency box, she pulled out the bolt cutters. 30 inches, red handles. She grabbed leather gloves too, the small first aid kit and her lunch pail. Then she went back down. Pretzel led her to the boiler like he'd been doing it his whole life. "I've got cutters," Delia said. "I'm going to start with your neck because that's the worst one. Then your hands, then your feet. Try not to move." She put on the gloves. She slid one blade between the wire and the raw skin of his throat, careful as she'd ever been in her life, and squeezed. The wire popped and fell away. He drew a breath that shook his whole body. "Easy," she said. "Easy, I've got you." She worked the wrists, 2 loops, then a third cinch deep. His hands were gray. She unwound the wire and set it aside so nobody would step on it. She took his hands and rubbed the palms because that's what you do when a hand has gone that cold. His fingers twitched, then they moved. Then he made a sound that wasn't quite a word. "Don't talk yet, feet next." The wire had bitten into the boot leather and she had to work slow so she didn't cut him. When the last loop came off, he pulled his knees to his chest and put his forehead down on them and his shoulders started to shake. Delia didn't say anything. She sat back on her heels and let him have it. Pretzel walked over and lay against his hip. After a while, the shaking stopped. He lifted his head and looked at the dog and then at her. "Sandwich," she said. He almost laughed. It came out like a cough. She tore the meatloaf sandwich in half and put half in his good hand. She poured coffee into the thermos cap and held it out. He took it with both hands like it was the last cup of coffee on earth. He ate slow. He drank slower. He didn't ask her name. She didn't ask his. When he was done, she helped him up. He was 6'3" and built like a boxer gone thick, and he leaned on her all the way down that corridor and up those 20 steps. Pretzel came behind like he was clearing the rear guard. She took him into the first-floor break room, sat him in the chair with arms, put her old wool coat over him because he was shivering, poured more coffee. He closed his eyes. Pretzel jumped into his lap. His hands settled on the dog's back and stayed there. The clock said 3:15. Delia sat down across from him and let her own eyes close for just a second. She thought we made it. She was wrong. The sound of an engine came in off the street. Not one, 3, deep, throaty, unmistakable motorcycles. They came down the block and slowed and idled outside the loading dock. The man's eyes opened. Every line in his body went hard. "That's them," he said. His voice was rough as gravel. "That's the roadmen. They came back to make sure." Delia was on her feet before she knew she'd stood up. "How many?" 3 engines. Could be more in a truck. They travel with a truck. "Why come back?" "Because after 2 days a body starts smelling. Somebody upstairs was going to notice. They came to move it." He tried to stand. His knees gave. He sat back down hard. "You need to leave, out the back. Take the dog, go now. If they find you up here, they will not let you walk." Delia looked at the door. She looked at Pretzel, ears flat on the linoleum. She was 58 years old. She had a bad back and $43 in her checking account and a landlord 6 weeks past patient. There was a fire door on the west side she could be through in 90 seconds. She didn't move. "They come down here," she said. "They come looking for a body, so we give them a story. You don't understand what these men are." "I understand what they aren't. They aren't looking for a cleaning lady mopping the floor. They aren't looking for a dachshund. They're looking for you." She pulled him out of the chair. He was too heavy and she was too small, but she got him standing. "Janitor closet, end of the hall. Under the tarp behind the mop sink. You do not make a sound." "Ma'am, please go." "Move your feet, Sergeant." He looked at her. She hadn't called him anything until then. She'd read the patch and used it, and she saw him hear it. Something crossed his face that wasn't fear. He moved. They made it down the hall as the engines cut out. She pushed him behind the sink, threw the tarp over him and rags on top. She set the bolt cutters and the coil of cut wire on the shelf above him, out of sight but where she could grab them fast. She closed the door. She grabbed her mop, dunked it, and started mopping the hallway like she'd been doing it all night. Pretzel padded back to his tote. "Good boy." The service door up the ramp banged open. 2 men came down. Bigger than they had any right to be. Leather vests over thermals. One had a shaved head and a scar from ear to jaw. The other had a red beard and small dark eyes. They stopped when they saw her. "Hey, sweetheart," the bald one said. "What are you doing?" "Mopping." She didn't look up. "Who else is in the building?" "Just me. Been just me since 11. You go in the basement." "Not supposed to. Cortez told me first day. Boiler's bad." The red beard walked past her toward the basement door, eyes on her the whole time. She kept mopping, slow strokes. "You hear anything down there tonight?" the bald one asked. "I hear something every night in this building. Old pipes." "You hear anything human?" She looked up then. She met his eyes, because she'd learned a long time ago that people who look down get pressed, and people who look up get left alone. "Mister, I hear my own knees, my own back, and this old dog snoring in that tote. That's all my ears do at my age." He almost smiled, not quite. The red beard went down the stairs. The bald one drifted around the break room. He picked up her thermos, unscrewed it, sniffed, set it back down. He looked at the coat draped over the good chair. "Cold in here." "Always cold in this building." He looked at the coat a second longer than he should have. Then he moved on. From the basement came the sound of the red beard swearing, loud, once, then longer, then boots coming back up fast. He came into the hall with a coil of cut wire in his hand, not the wire she'd hidden, another one, from down there. He's gone. The bald one's hand went under his vest. A car horn went off out on the street. 3 long blasts. A voice from the truck yelled up the ramp, something Delia couldn't make out, but she caught the word cops. The 2 men were out the service door before she'd taken her next breath. The bikes fired up, tires squealed, then quiet. Delia stood in the middle of the hallway with a mop in her hand and her heart going like a rabbit's. She'd made it. He'd made it. Round 1. If you're still with me, and I hope you are, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. This is where the story turns, because those men were not gone. They were coming back with more. She opened the closet. Boone was sitting up with the bolt cutters in his hand. He'd heard everything. That wasn't cops, he said. That was a lookout. They ran because somebody rolled by, not because somebody's coming. How long till they come back? 15 minutes, maybe 20. They'll bring the whole crew. How many is the whole crew? 8, 10. Delia sat down on the linoleum next to him. Pretzel put his chin on her knee. You have a phone. They took it. There's a phone on the wall in the break room. I'm going to call the police. They'll take too long. Then I'll call anyone else you tell me to call. He looked at her a long time. There's a number, a bar, ask for Cutter, tell him where Boone is, tell him the roadmen have him. Tell him 5 in the morning is going to be too late. Delia stood, her back cracked. Then let's not waste the 15 minutes. She dialed 911 first because that's what you do when a woman her age was raised by a woman her mother's age. She said the address and men with weapons and hung up before dispatch could ask her name. Then she dialed Boone's number. 7 rings before a woman picked up. Iron Kettle. I need to talk to Cutter. Who's calling? A cleaning lady in East Oakland. Boone McCrae is in my building. The roadmen had him tied up in the basement for 2 days, and they're coming back in 15 minutes. Silence, then say the address. Delia said it. Hold that line, lady. Do not hang up. She heard a door slam, glass rattle. Men shouting, and boots and engines already firing up on the other end. Lady, you got 12 minutes till we're there. Can you last 12 minutes? I don't know. You get him somewhere they can't see him, and you sit tight. The line went dead. Delia walked back. Boone had gotten himself up onto his feet, leaning on the sink. He looked bad but upright. 12 minutes, she said. Your people are coming. They'll cut it close. You need to hide. When they come in, you hide. I'm not going to hide. Ma'am. Delia, my name is Delia Vance, and I'm not hiding in my own workplace. He closed his eyes. He nodded once. He didn't argue. She helped him to the break room and put him behind the door where he could see the hallway, but the hallway couldn't see him. She put the fire axe from the wall bracket into his good hand. She kept the bolt cutters. Pretzel took a spot under the table, not scared, not brave, just where he decided he needed to be. They waited. The bikes came back at 9 minutes. 5 engines cutting out on the street, then a truck door, then boots up the ramp. 6 men came down the hall, the bald one, the red beard, 4 others. The one in front was older, thinner, with a face like a hatchet. He stopped in the middle of the hall. Ma'am, he said, loud so it would carry. We know he's here. Bring him out and you walk away. Delia stepped into the hall, bolt cutters at her side. I don't know what you're talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Mister, I've been mopping since 11. I told your friends. I don't go in the basement. He smiled. It didn't reach anywhere. I'm going to ask you one more time. You can ask me 100 times. The answer's the same. He nodded to the bald one who started down the hall toward her. Then a lot of things happened at once. Pretzel came out from under the table and clamped his teeth into the bald man's ankle. Old dachshunds bite harder than people think. The bald one yelled and looked down. The break room door swung open behind him. Boone stepped out with the fire axe. He didn't swing it. He just stood there with it. "Ronnie," Boone said. His voice was ruined, but it carried. "Tell your boys to stand down." Ronnie didn't move. "You're supposed to be dead, Boone." "Yeah. Well, debt still owed." "Debt was never mine. Debt was your chapter's. Chapter says otherwise." The bald one had shaken Pretzel off and had a knife out now. He looked at Ronnie. Ronnie held up one finger. The bald one waited. "Ronnie," Boone said, "my brothers are 8 minutes out. You know they are. You can walk out that door right now and this doesn't go the way it's about to go, or you can stay and find out." Ronnie's eyes flicked to Delia, to the bolt cutters, to the dog now standing between her ankles growling like a much bigger dog, to the axe, then to the 6 men behind him. He was doing math. "Boone, I'll see you again." "I imagine you will." Ronnie turned and walked back up the hall. He said something to his men and they went with him. The service door banged shut. Engines. Tires quiet. Boone lowered the axe. He turned to look at her. Her arm was starting to shake now that it didn't need to be steady. "Sit down, ma'am." "Delia." "Sit down, Delia." She sat. 4 minutes later the second wave came. Not the roadmen, his brothers. They came through the service door like a flood, 12 of them. A big man in front with a shaved head and a gray beard down to his sternum. Cutter, she guessed. They saw Boone. They stopped. Cutter came up slow. He looked at Boone's throat, at the wire marks on his wrists, then at the tiny gray-haired woman sitting in a break-room chair with bolt cutters across her knees and a dachshund on her feet. "Who's this?" Cutter said to Boone. Boone opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He couldn't speak. His face did something no one in that room had ever seen it do. His jaw went. His eyes filled. His shoulders, which had held up under a broken nose and 2 days of baling wire and a knife fight standoff, gave out. He sat down on the linoleum right where he was. He put his face in his hands. And the sergeant-at-arms of the Oakland chapter, a man who had never cried in front of another human being in his adult life, wept. His brothers didn't move. Cutter looked at Delia. She stood up, walked over, and put her hand on Boone's shoulder. She didn't say anything. She just kept her hand there. Pretzel came and sat next to Boone's knee. The rest of the men stood around them in a wide, quiet circle. Nobody said a word. The police arrived 9 minutes after that. Nobody ran. Nobody drew a weapon. Cutter met them at the door and did the talking, and Delia gave a statement that told the truth as far as it needed to go and left out the parts that didn't need telling. They took Boone to the hospital. When they wheeled him toward the ambulance, he found her eyes across the parking lot. He didn't wave. He just held her look until the doors closed on him. She finished her shift. That's the part she was proudest of later, when she'd tell the story to her sister on the phone. She finished her shift. She mopped the hallway she'd already mopped. She emptied the trash on the second floor. She locked the doors at 5 like every other morning and walked out with Pretzel in the tote and her lunch pail empty on her arm. She got on the bus home and fell asleep against the window. The driver woke her at her stop. She slept 11 hours. When she woke, there was a knock at her door. A young man in a leather vest, clean cut, nervous. He handed her an envelope. "Ma'am, we'd like to come by Saturday if that's all right. Boone would like to see you." He didn't wait for an answer. He nodded to the dog and left. The envelope had $2,000 in it, cash, and a note in blocky handwriting, for the door and the boots. More coming, do not turn it down. She didn't understand about the boots until she saw hers by the door. The soles had split from her running around on the linoleum. She hadn't noticed. She kept the money because her landlord was 6 weeks past patient, and because a woman her age has learned that pride does not pay rent. Saturday came. They pulled up on Foothill Boulevard at 2 in the afternoon. 14 bikes and a pickup. Every neighbor she had was at a window. Some of the older ones stood on porches with their arms crossed until they saw the men were carrying grocery bags. Boone came up her walk with a bouquet of yellow chrysanthemums in one hand and Cutter on his other side. His face was still purple, his voice was still gravel, but he could stand on his own now. He didn't speak until she'd sat him down at her kitchen table. Then he said, "Ma'am, Delia, I want to tell you something, and I want you to hear it out." "All right." 7 people walked past that basement door in 2 days. Cortez, 2 guys from a demolition survey, a locksmith, a guy from the water company, 2 of my own brothers who came looking and didn't look hard enough. 7. You were the only one who opened it. I heard something. They heard it too. Cortez heard it and locked the door harder. My brothers heard nothing because they didn't sit still long enough. You heard it because you were paying attention. And you opened the door because you weren't scared to open a door. She poured him coffee. She poured Cutter coffee. She poured herself coffee. I was scared, Boone. I was scared the whole time. I know. That's what makes it what it is. He put his big hand flat on the table and looked at it like he wasn't sure it was his. I've been in this club 26 years. I've had my brothers stitch me up. I've had my brothers bury my father. I've never had anybody do for me what you did. Because a brother, we owe each other. That's the deal. A stranger doesn't owe me anything. A stranger walks past. A stranger has every reason to walk past. I don't know if I believe that. You don't have to, I do. Cutter set an envelope on the table, thicker than the first. For your landlord, paid up 2 years, and your bus card is done. You got a ride when you need one, day or night, one of ours. Delia opened her mouth. Do not turn it down, Cutter said. Same words as the note, same tone. She closed her mouth. Boone said, there's more, if you want it. If you don't, we go and you never see us again except when you call, but if you want it. He stopped. He looked at Pretzel, who had climbed into his lap for the 2nd time in a week. If you want it, you got 14 new sons, and a few daughters, and an old man who is going to come by every Wednesday to sit at this table and drink your coffee and not talk about it if you don't want to. Delia sat quiet a long time. Then she reached across the table and took his hand in both of hers. Her hands looked small in his. They both looked at that. Wednesdays are fine, she said. He came the next Wednesday, and the one after. And the one after. He brought groceries the first month and stopped when she told him to. He fixed the sink she'd been ignoring for a year. He fixed her front door. He fixed the wobble in her kitchen chair. He fixed the porch step his own boys had almost cracked coming up it. He didn't talk about what had happened. Neither did she. Pretzel got a leather vest at Christmas that year. It said Halston across the back in silver letters. He wore it 3 times, decided it made him hot and was done with it, and Boone laughed harder than his brothers had heard him laugh in a decade. Pretzel died the following spring. Boone was there. He dug the grave in the corner of Delia's little strip of a yard and set the stone himself. Delia lived another 11 years. The Oakland chapter buried her when it was her turn. 60 men in leather at a small graveside on a bright morning. Cutter said a few words. Boone couldn't get through his and nobody minded, and one of the younger men finished it for him. They put a small chain in her casket at Boone's ask. A single link of baling wire, cleaned and polished until it shone. His idea. Hers in a way, too. Because for 2 nights in a shuttered warehouse in East Oakland, A tired woman had heard a chain rattle behind a boiler. And unlike every other soul in that city, she had gone to see what was on the other end of it. Tighten to 4,995 words, target 5,000 within plus or minus 2%. The hook is intact and unchanged at exactly 150 words. The Falcom beat, we made it. She was wrong. The trigger, the returning engines. The CTA after round one, the standoff payoff, Boone's weeping, and the full resolution with the closing echo are all preserved. Cuts came from redundant sensory lines, doubled dialogue tags, and repeated internal beats.